The U.S. Air Force Rapid Sustainment Office, or RSO, embraces innovative and scalable technology solutions to modernize maintenance operations and sustainment activities across the department's thousands of aircraft and other mission-critical systems. RSO is also leveraging its data and the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning to improve maintenance data quality, ensure mission readiness, and continuous tactical advantages. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and joining us to talk about that today are Matt Dansereau, a lead engineer from the U.S. Air Force's Rapid Sustainment Office, and Russ Kole, DoD Delivery Executive of Professional Services at Google Public Sector. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. And Matt, I'd like to start off by asking, can you briefly describe RSO's mission, objectives, and how you're using APIs in your cloud environment to modernize your mission?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having us, Wyatt. So the Rapid Sustainment Office, we were stood up just a few years ago, back in 2018, to kind of fill a void that the senior leadership have identified across the Air Force, where we really need to focus advanced technology deployment out to the maintenance and logistics sustainment community, right? A lot of the life cycle costs associated with a weapon system happens out in operations and sustainment. And there's not a lot of technology or technology providers that are supremely focused on that part of the life cycle. And also the idea of increasing warfighter readiness, making sure that our force is supportable and ready to go if they're needed. And so we were stood up to accelerate technology developments and delivery out to the warfighters for maintenance and logistics. And so one of the technologies, as you mentioned, that we're looking into is kind of part of our data and digital ecosystem. Application programming interfaces allow us an industry standard to create usable integrations between our digital systems that is really an advancement in what the Air Force has experienced in the past and what the DoD as a whole has experienced, where we have a lot of federated systems that don't talk to each other. So it requires the user, the end user, our warfighter, to do this swivel chair integration. So they have to go between the systems and synthesize how these data fields work together and the relationships between them, or they have to go into multiple systems and provide the same pieces of information. So here at the Rapid Sustainment Office, we're trying to do a paradigm shift. We're creating a hub and spoke architecture with the help of Google and application programming interfaces out at the application level to share those pieces of information in real time and create those transactional relationships so that the user doesn't have to be the integrator anymore. We let the systems do that, and that way our users get faster and smarter, and we make quicker and better decisions.
Well, Russ, I'm sure as you've been calling on the Department of Defense over the years, you've seen the challenges of integrating these different systems. Talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges that often plague your defense agency customers in their cloud modernization efforts.
Yeah, I think a challenge that we see very frequently is the need to be able to integrate an ecosystem of systems that has, evolved over a long period of time and brings with it a lot of variation. It's a heterogeneous environment, systems that have been constructed and put to use over decades that were never designed to be implemented in a way that modern architecture really enables. So one of the things that our approach to using APIs to achieve access to data is it allows us to meet the data where it is, as opposed to constructing complex and fragile ETL to build separate data lakes and replicate data. We're taking an approach to utilize the systems of record where they sit, because it's very difficult to look at an effort that requires the retooling of a massive amount of the infrastructure that an organization runs on. So we have to be able to deliver capability quickly, and APIs allow us to couple to those systems where they are and deliver new digital experiences to warfighters.
Makes a lot of sense. And then Matt, talk to us a little about how you're working with industry partners, maybe more now than a year or two ago, to solve these modernization challenges. And what's an example of how you're gaining better insights from your data as a result?
That's a good question. So we're very much trying to leverage what industry is doing, and in a lot of sectors, in a lot of ways, industry is ahead of the Department of Defense. There's a lot of processes that we do, a lot of measures that we put in place, and the technologies associated with them can be seen as a bit antiquated. Now, there's a place for some of those processes and safety measures because they do come from years of experience, and then the importance and the implications of what our users have to do, how it relates to their lives and how it relates to America and our foreign policy. But what we're trying to do is leverage the lessons and leverage the technologies that industry has advanced, and seeing how we can transform our processes while maintaining some of those, security and safety protocols. But how do we accelerate our capabilities by leveraging their lessons? As Google has done with application programming interfaces and all of the networks and integrations that they've put together, can we take those lessons? Can we take some of those products, even leverage the maturity of them, bring them and adapt them into the military use case, and then accelerate deployment and adoption? And so what we are doing with the portfolio that we're working with Google is we are really looking at the pain points of the maintenance flight line users. What are the pain points that they have, and then attacking them with solutions. And a lot of the solutions come down to those digital applications and the integration of those. And so what we're starting to see with this hub and spoke ecosystem that we're creating of all of these different maintenance and logistics applications is we are seeing a drastic reduction in the amount of time that a maintainer spends doing duplication of data entry or data synthesis. It could be 1 to 2 hours of their shift per day. So imagine taking that time, instead of having them sit at a computer and do that data entry, we're putting them back out at the aircraft and allowing them to do maintenance, which results in the aircraft being more available, which results in a much better posture for the military.
Absolutely. Well, Russ, back to you. You talked about going to where the data is instead of bringing the data into one central place, and that's obviously important as data continues to become more and more of a factor. But talk to us a little about how Google's working with defense organizations to use cloud technologies to actually gain better insights from the data that's there.
Yeah, so we have a couple of programs with various parts of the Department of Defense around unlocking access to data. There are some very large data initiatives that are underway in the department around creating very large analytics capabilities. And Google is working with those efforts to API connect those data systems to allow users to develop analytics use cases, model simulation and analysis capability on top of that data. There's efforts to create a centralized way of examining logistics data across varying different constituencies, and being able to bring the view of that data with the defense industrial base supply data to understand what is the universe of all availability of these particular items across what is inside the DoD and then outside, or perhaps in partner forces. So APIs, play a huge role in being able to aggregate all of these disparate systems that hold valuable information to be able to get a full picture of supply and the impact on logistics.
And Matt, from your perspective, how is taking an API first approach helping the RSO solve some of its larger organizational challenges, and maybe the way you all work with larger parts of the Department of Defense?
Yep. So in my mind, it's really allowing us to take a paradigm shift away from the way that we've typically done technical development, solution development, because it's not just the APIs, right? So the APIs give you that interaction layer at the mission application level. What we're doing in concert with that is the hub and spoke methodology. And what it results in is the idea of distributed functionality. So the DoD and a lot of some of these bigger government organizations, we have a history of trying to develop one system to rule them all. So one large system that meets everyone's requirements for everything. And And we know that that's not always successful. We either have schedule issues, cost issues, or suitability issues. The product ends up not being good enough for really many of the requirements. And so what we're doing with APIs and then the API management backbone that we're developing with Google is saying you no longer have to do that. You can now develop these smaller mission applications that are very good at the requirements and the capabilities that they are responsible for, and then you stitch them all together to meet the rest of the requirements. And you do it in a seamless way that has reusable connections, so that for the user is very seamless, and they're getting some of the same effect as having one system to rule them all, but we've done it much quicker, and it's much easier to manage in the long run if we ever want to do a tech refresh, or if we want to add capability or remove capability that's no longer applicable. So we're becoming much more agile. So instead of one large ship with a small rudder, we've got a bunch of little speedboats out here that are all working together.
That's a great analogy. And then, Russ, how can defense organizations think about applying APIs to other sustainment challenges and set their organizations up for success?
Yeah, so when I think about where APIs can assist, there's a couple of places where I see APIs most useful is when the use case that a warfighter has is they need to understand the state of now. Many data and analytics efforts that enterprises and the military have gone through are around creating purpose-built data lakes or purpose-built data environments that have a collection of data that has been, moved and transformed and put into a centralized place, and that data has some age to it. That data is typically not real time. It's on a delay of a day or a week or a month or more. And we're approaching a point where we need to understand the current status on the battlefield as it is at the moment. And that's something that is going to require the collection and aggregation of many different disparate data sources into a real-time view, where having all of that data located in a centralized place becomes infeasible because of the time it takes to move everything and the amount of delay you would incur there. So when we listen to the strategic objectives at the Air Force, where you want to have all domain command and control, or you want to have full spectrum awareness, and you want to be able to share data at the speed of relevance, those things all sort of translate to me as we need to understand the current state of things as they are and as they are progressing, which is something that can only happen when you're able to reach into those systems in real time. Being able to bring AI to warfighters and have AI assist at the warfighter is something that's also going to require access to the state of now, which is what APIs can enable. So you're going to build, maybe sophisticated AI ML models. You're going to train them on large historical data sets, but you're going to apply those models to the state you find yourself in at the moment. So you're going to need to have the connectivity and the data mesh and the ability to feed in the real world as it is today into those models, so it can then predict, where something is in the next 30 minutes, or what weather is going to impact, or what the state of a particular situation is over time. And those are things that are going to require real-time access to data, which only APIs can provide.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And then, Matt, kind of looking out on the horizon, can you share some of the technology priorities that the RSO Directorate is focusing on now and over the coming year?
Yes, absolutely. So the Rapid Sustainment Office, we have 6 technology focus areas that are always our bailiwick, are always in our scope. And that is AI/ML, so artificial intelligence and machine learning, advanced manufacturing, which includes things like 3D printing, cold spray, anything that's pushing the bounds of how quickly and how agilely we can manufacture resources. Then we have data and digital environments is another tech focus area. We have automation and robotics, rapid and austere environments. and augmented and virtual reality. So all of those tech focus areas are typically how we organize our subject matter expertise to go after strategic level pain points. And those strategic level pain points and strategic guidance are really focused on Secretary Kendall's operational imperatives is one. And then we look at multi-capable airmen and the agile combat employment, CONEPS, which is how we posture ourselves for maybe a near peer conflict. And really all of those surround these pain points associated with how do we be faster, how are we do more with less, and operate in a contested logistics environment. And so those are all extremely important when we start thinking about the key solution attributes that we bring to that fight. So being lighter and leaner, having better decision advantage by integrating the digital ecosystems and shortening that decision chain is all very important for us going to the future, and will be a huge focus in the next year.
Absolutely. And then, Russ, your final thoughts on the last recommendations that you might offer to your defense customers on really adopting an API first approach in their modernization journey. What would you recommend?
Yeah, so I think with most organizations, when they have to go toward an API first approach versus what Matt referenced, one system to rule them all, I think what you want to think about is how do you unlock developers to be able to deliver experiences to users with a composable set of capabilities. So the thing with an API first approach is that the ecosystem itself doesn't deliver functionality. The ecosystem enables the rapid development and deployment of functionality. So you take an organization with several hundred data systems and repositories, they would go through and plumb those applications and those systems to an API management platform. And from there, you can now compose and recompose those systems into whatever use cases you need. So if you think about an organization that has a very large supply chain and a distributed supply chain that has multiple external sources, you have very large demand signals coming from places like the sustainment centers, and then outside flight line operations and maintenance centers. All of that data, being able to be addressed allows you to get a view of what's happening in your very complex environment. But a lot of times organizations are sort of paralyzed as to how to get started. And I think the beauty of what we've done with the RSO is we started with a very specific outcome we wanted to achieve. We wanted to achieve a digital experience for flight line maintenance operations that solved for data duplication, the delay in notification of status changes, and the ability to have real-time understanding as to what's happening on the flight line. And the solution to that problem was this hub and spoke architecture that enables the best of breed across all of these different capabilities to be brought together and architected in this hub and spoke model. That model is highly applicable to a lot of different use cases across enterprise and DoD. So to deliver that capability, you think, well, I want to deliver an outcome and I want to get to an outcome quickly. And the API first approach is the right approach to do that. So start by identifying an outcome that you want to achieve with the capability. And maybe that gives you a scope to look at and said, well, I need the data and I need to interact with a subset of these systems against this user base, and start that as a program to pilot the capability and to start to lay the groundwork. And you work iteratively and you go after your most important strategic objectives and your most important impact first. And over time, you iteratively develop a very broad and capable API ecosystem, but you're doing it by solving tactical problem or solving a problem that the warfighter needs. And you don't set out on this 5, 6, 7 year journey where you're not going to develop any capability until year 5 or year 6. You can develop capability and deploy it very rapidly, quickly. And over time, as you continue down that path, you bring more and more systems and capability to that ecosystem and you get an ecosystem that just returns higher and higher ROI over time.
That's great advice, and definitely, I think your point about not just only starting small, but really and focus, but really start with your most important strategic needs, and then build iteratively from there using that sort of hub and spoke API method. So some great stuff today, gentlemen. Matt Dansereau and Russ Kole, thank you so much for joining us, sharing your respective insights, and really talking about how an API approach can really make a huge difference in modernizing in the Department of Defense and government writ large. So thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, Wyatt.
Thank you.